Hi everyone, welcome back to my countdown of my top 20 favorite films of all time. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into number 17. Number 17. Wimbledon. This is probably a movie that I could get a lot of flack for by some people because this is not necessarily the or what most people would call a good movie. It's probably the movie on my list I consider the guilty pleasure. I mean, even just looking at the rest of my list, it's like there's nothing really else I'm as embarrassed to like as to like Wimbledon. Wimbledon is a romantic comedy that came out in 2004. It stars Paul Bettany, Kirsten Dunst, Jon Favreau, and a couple of other actors whose faces I recognize, but names I don't remember. And it's a movie that the first time I saw it, I could not get enough of it. I watched it, I think, maybe another 2 or 3 times after the first time I saw it, because my sister was actually the one who bought it on DVD, and we watched it together. And my sister is by far more like the person that would watch cheesy romantic movies and really kind of this kind of junk food kind of romantic stuff. Like, I mean, she likes Twilight, she likes 50 Shades of Grey, all that kind of stuff. But this is the one movie where it's like, I really liked this one, and if I had to pick a romantic comedy that I like, it's Wimbledon. Basically, the story is, these two tennis players who meet at Wimbledon. They get caught up in this sort of whirlwind romance, and it's supposed to just be all fun and games, no real strings attached, and then they end up falling in love with each other, and the typical stuff happens in romantic comedies. Probably the one thing that I would say it does not follow typical formula in terms of a romantic comedy is the misunderstanding, or basically the whole climax of most romantic comedies. This movie doesn't necessarily have a misunderstanding. It just basically has a big fight, because Paul Bettany's character is the one who starts kind of falling in love with Kirsten Dunst's character, and she is trying desperately to not fall for him. Like, she wants to keep it relaxed and no strings attached, because she's more focused on her tennis career, and as a result she ends up losing in one of the big rounds for Wimbledon. She kind of blames it on Bettany, on his character, because she thinks that he went to go fuck her and then just went off to go play his game, and it threw her off her game. A lot of this movie has to deal with the tennis players are all about repetition. They're about patterns. They're about schedules. They're and also very much superstition. These people rely a lot on their superstitions. A lot of that has to play into the movie, and it's like the day that she lost her match. They kind of go through that. They're like, something wasn't quite right. I think, and that was the day where, like, she realizes that she loves Paul Bettany's character, and so that's what threw her off her game. And so after that, she's really pissed at him, and she really hates him, and she tries to push him away. And so it's not really the traditional misunderstanding that we see in a lot of romantic comedies. But otherwise, it's formulaic. I know it's formulaic, but I think the one thing that really draws me to the movie is the chemistry between Paul Bettany and Kirsten Dunst, which they don't look like the typical on-screen romance couple that you would normally think of for these types of movies. I really like Kirsten Dunst in this role. She plays not necessarily quirky, like, she's kind of a no-nonsense kind of girl. She gets right down to business with some stuff, which is partially with how she was raised for being a tennis player. But Paul Bettany, part of his draw in this movie is that I really like Paul Bettany as an actor. I think he's a really good actor, and also the family dynamic he has with his parents and with his brother. His brother, who's played by James McAvoy, which is absolutely hilarious, because there's a scene where we're first introduced to McAvoy's character, and it's Bettany who comes home to visit the family, and he hears something in the distance, and so he walks in on his brother, who's a bicyclist. He walks in on his brother practicing and watching porn. It's such a great introduction to the character, because that is basically his whole character. A, he's unsupportive of his brother. B, he's kind of no-nonsense. And C, he's really perverted. And the family dynamic, like, even with his parents even have, like, this feud that's kind of going on throughout most of the movie and doesn't get resolved until near the end. But that's kind of one thing I really like about this movie, is that normally in these romantic comedies, subplots have absolutely nothing to do with the overall story, and for the most part, they very rarely get resolved. I've found that a lot in romantic comedies. It's one of the reasons why I don't like most romantic comedies, is A, because they're formulaic, and B, because any subplot they come up with has no bearing on the plot and ultimately barely gets resolved. In this one, though, there's only two subplots, and both get resolved like they both have a bit of a resolution at the end of it. I mean, his brother's subplot isn't really a huge subplot. It's just kind of it's sort of like just an expansion on who the character is and like how the way he thinks. But his parents' subplot, it has a nice way of rounding it, and I think it's a nice telling of how Paul Bettany's character was raised by watching his parents and seeing how his parents interact with each other and how they're dealing with this fight. It's sort of a bit of a foreshadowing with Paul Bettany and Kirsten Dunst's character later on in the movie. Also, another thing I really like about this is the way it's shot. It has great well, I shouldn't say great cinematography, but I like the way it's shot. Again, I'm actually surprised I have another sports movie on my list, because I've said before, I'm not huge into sports movies. I'd say the only other sports movie other than A League of Their Own and Wimbledon that I really like is Cool Runnings, and that's mainly just for, nostalgia purposes because it was absolutely hilarious in the 90s. Otherwise, I don't really like sports movies. I find them all to be really repetitive and dry. This is a sports movie where it's not predominantly about the sport. It's more about the romance. But the sport comes in just enough where it's like I knew nothing about tennis before watching this movie. I really don't know the rules of tennis. I don't know how you get points. I don't understand the point system, really. And then when I've watched the movie at least a dozen times at this point, and now I know how the rules work. I know the point system, and that's just through sheerly watching the movie and understanding, oh, okay, that meant they was out, that means this means you get this many points, this means that they win, this means that they won this set, I actually began to understand how the game is played. And I think that's really good when you can have a sports movie that's mainly featuring a romance, and without really any exposition on how the game works, I actually learned how tennis works. It's one of the reasons why I don't like mainly football movies. The only football movie in the last 2 decades that I can even remotely say that I liked is Remember the Titans, and that's just mainly because it's Disney and it's feel good, and I was forced to watch it a lot as a kid because my sister really liked it. But I still don't understand the rules of I really don't understand football as a sport, and I don't mean soccer. I mean American football. I really don't understand it as a sport. I don't understand the point system. I don't understand what certain moves are, or the names for the guys on the team. I don't understand the draw people have to. I really don't understand the point system. But with tennis, it kind of makes more sense the way that it's done, and at least it has a bit of a rhyme and reason to it, at least more so than football does to me. I don't know why I'm talking about sports so much, because I really don't understand most sports. This movie doesn't necessarily have the best ratings. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it's somewhere in the 60% range. I will admit it's not a great movie. It's not, the best performed. It's not the best written. There are some extremely cheesy moments in it, but overall it is not bad. And if I'm gonna watch something that is a romantic comedy, I like the fact that there are two actors that I really like. I mean, for the most part, I didn't like Kirsten Dunst. For the most part, when she was doing Spider-Man, I really didn't like her as Mary Jane Watson for some reason. But otherwise, I've liked her in a lot of stuff. And like I've said before, Paul Bettany is a really good actor. I really love his stuff. And to see these two actors, I think that they have some of the best romantic comedy chemistry that I've seen. I mean, a lot of people may debate that with Silver Linings Playbook, which I still haven't seen, but apparently it's incredibly good, which I'm not going to doubt at this point. A, I haven't seen it, and B, it's getting incredibly good reviews, and everyone I know that has seen it has loved it, so I'm not going to argue. But, until I see it, Wimbledon, I have to say, is the romantic comedy that I will easily watch over and over again. it's the one movie I think that gives into my more girly side when it comes to watching chick flicks. I know a lot of people whenever people try to define the difference between a romantic comedy and a chick flick, you know, Wimbledon, it's a romantic comedy, but it's barely a chick flick. And I admit it's a chick flick. But the thing is, I think some guys can enjoy Wimbledon because of Paul Bettany and because of some of the more cruder jokes that it does make. And when I mean crude, I don't mean it's childish. I mean they make adult jokes. They make jokes that are not really that in your face. It's just more like it's either innuendo or it's subtle and it's not overtly in your face. And it's not childish either with how they do it. I think it's that some guys can get into it. I honestly believe that Wimbledon is a much easier movie to watch than the fucking Twilight series. I think I know a lot of men that would prefer to watch Wimbledon over Twilight. I know that's not the best recommendation in the world, that at least it's better than Twilight, but I mean, if everyone has to have a chick flick guilty pleasure, this one's definitely mine. So that's my number 17. Come back for number 16 tomorrow, and keep watching to find out what my number 1 favorite film of all time is. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.